everyone, this is Miss Hamilton. Today we're going to be learning how to make sugar cookies. You can follow along with the recipe I gave you in class, or if you don't have it with you, log on to the e-board and open up the document for the sugar cookies. First off, we're going to go over the ingredients. You need to use 1 stick of butter, or half a cup of butter, and notice that it's softened. I placed the butter in the microwave for 10 seconds in order to do that. Next, we're going to use 1 cup of sugar, 1 egg, 1 3/4 cups of flour, baking powder, which is our leavening agent. This is what is going to make our sugar cookies rise in the oven. 1 tablespoon of milk, half a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So the sugar cookie recipe in class is going to be a 2-day lab. The first part of our video is going to show you how to make the cookie dough, and the second part of the video is going to be when we roll out the dough and we actually bake the cookies. If you wanted to make the sugar cookies at home, you could easily do that. You would just need to chill the dough for 2 hours in the refrigerator. But for class, it's going to be a 2-day lab. So I'm going to be reading off of our recipe and showing you each step. So step 1, it says in the directions for day 1, in a mixing bowl, combine softened butter and sugar with a wooden spoon. This is called creaming the butter. So before I do anything, I always want to cut some wax paper. I'm going to place the wax paper underneath the bowl. In case I make any mess, it's going to land on the wax paper and not on the counter. It'll save time later when you're cleaning. So I'm going to take my softened butter and I'm going to add it to my smaller bowl. From here I'm going to measure out my 1 cup of sugar. Just dip and sweep, tap off the excess for the sugar. I'm going to add that into the bowl. Now we're going to start to combine the butter and the sugar. Once the butter is creamed, it'll get a nice light and fluffy texture. Just like so. From here, you're going to add your egg, your vanilla, and your milk to the creamed butter mixture. All of the ingredients in this small mixing bowl are going to be our wet ingredients. 1 bowl is for wet ingredients. The second bowl, which you're going to see, is for our dry ingredients. So I'm going to crack the egg right into the bowl, avoiding any shells landing inside the mixture. I'm going to add my half teaspoon of vanilla. Again, I want to measure away from the bowl, just in case I over pour. Here's my half teaspoon. Okay, see? Because I measured on the wax paper, it's less of a mess. And you're going to use 1 tablespoon of milk. Now, it would be very difficult to try and measure that 1 tablespoon of milk from this big pitcher. Okay, we don't want to do that. So instead, I suggest pouring just a little bit of milk into the measuring cup, maybe like 1/4 of a cup. Take the tablespoon, angle the measuring cup, and just scoop out the 1 tablespoon of milk. Makes it a lot easier and it's less mess. So I'm going to mix all of my wet ingredients together until they're well combined. and I no longer see the egg or the vanilla. Everything is well combined. Step 3 in our directions says to measure in a mixing bowl the flour, the baking powder, and the salt. So like I said before, this is our dry ingredient bowl. So we need 1 3/4 cup of flour. So in order to measure the 1 3/4 cup, I'm going to take 1 cup, measure it out. You want to spoon in the flour just to break up any lumps that have been caused by the container. And I'm going to level this out to have an exact measurement. Tap that in. Then I'm going to use the 1/2 cup. Spoon in the flour. Notice that I have it overflowing on the top, and I'm going to level it off. Again, a 1/2 cup. And lastly, my 1/4 cup. Overflowing over the top, and I'm going to level it off. So that's when knowing math really comes into play. Okay, 1 3/4 of a cup. So I'm going to set the flour aside. Now I'm going to measure out my salt. Same as the vanilla before, you want to measure the salt away from the bowl. Salt is not an ingredient you want to overpour. You don't want salty sugar cookies. So I'm going to measure my 1/4 teaspoon of salt over my wax paper. Being careful that I don't overpour. Shake off any excess. Put that in. And lastly, we're going to use our baking powder, our leavening agent. We're going to use 1 teaspoon of baking powder. All you need to do is remove the top, put the spoon inside the canister. You want to level off the baking powder so you have an exact measurement of 1 teaspoon. As I mentioned before, the baking powder is what's going to make our sugar cookies rise while they're baking in the oven. I'm use the same wooden spoon as before, and I'm just combining our dry ingredients. Okay, so step number 4 says to add the wet ingredients to the dry ingredients. I'm going to use my rubber scraper to get all of the wet ingredients into the dry ingredient bowl. So I'm going to hold the bowl, tilt it just a little. I'm going to scrape all of the excess butter into the bowl. Get every last bit, if you can. So it looks nice and clean. And I'm going to now mix my wet and my dry ingredients together. This is going to make our sugar cookie dough. You want to continue to mix the sugar cookie dough till you no longer see flour by itself, okay, and it looks fully combined. So here's our sugar cookie dough once it's completed. Our next step, number 6, it says to place the cookie dough on some wax paper, and you're going to wrap it up like a present. Like I said in class, this is a 2-day lab, so we're going to be refrigerating this dough overnight. If you were to make this dough at home, refrigerate it for 2 hours. Okay, so I'm going to cut a new piece of wax paper. And I'm going to take my dough and scrape it right in the middle of the fresh sheet of wax paper. Okay, so you want to flatten this out just a little bit So tomorrow, or in 2 hours, when you roll out the sugar cookie dough, it's going to be a lot easier to shape. If you have any excess, add it to the dough. From here, we're going to wrap up the cookie dough just like a present. So I'm going to fold this in half. They turn it over, and in class you're going to label your cookie dough with the class period and your kitchen lab number.